It began like any other cold morning on the Eastern Front. German officers reviewed their maps, confident the Red Army was nearly broken. But at dawn on November 19, 1942, thunder echoed across the steppe, not from the sky, but from thousands of Soviet guns. Within hours, the German Sixth Army, once the pride of Hitler's forces, was surrounded, cut off and doomed. In that single day, everything changed. The commanders in Stalingrad realized something terrible. They were not winning the war anymore. They were fighting for survival. Stay until the end to learn what happened on the day the German High Command understood that Stalingrad, and perhaps the entire Eastern Front, was lost. The city of Stalingrad had already been burning for months. By November 1942, German troops occupied most of the ruined streets. Every building had become a fortress, every basement a bunker. The Soviets clung to the banks of the Volga, refusing to give up. To the German High Command, the battle seemed close to victory. Just one more push, one final assault. But while the Wehrmacht was fixated on the city itself, the Red Army was preparing something massive in the frozen fields beyond it. The operation had a name: Uranus, the calm before the storm. In mid-November, temperatures dropped far below freezing. German units were exhausted and short on supplies. Fuel was scarce and winter clothing had not yet arrived. Many soldiers dug into shallow trenches, trying to stay warm as their commanders reassured them that the Soviets had nothing left to fight with. But Soviet intelligence had been gathering for months. Under cover of snow and darkness, entire armies were repositioned north and south of Stalingrad. Hundreds of thousands of troops, tanks, artillery, cavalry, waited in silence. Their target wasn't the city. It was the flanks of the German Sixth Army, held by under-equipped Romanian and Italian divisions. November 19th, 1942, 7:30 a.m. Then it began. A wall of sound rolled across the steppe as over 3,500 Soviet guns opened fire simultaneously. The bombardment lasted for hours. It wasn't just a barrage, it was the beginning of the end. Romanian defences collapsed almost immediately. Soviet T-34 tanks poured through the gaps, cutting communications, overrunning positions and driving deep into the rear. Within 24 hours, chaos spread across the entire German front. At first, German commanders refused to believe it. Reports of enemy breakthroughs were dismissed as exaggerations. But by the second day, radio messages were filled with panic. Flanks collapsing, reinforcements needed, immediate withdrawal requested. The realization. By November 22nd, the trap had closed. The Soviet pincers met near the town of Kalash, sealing the entire German Sixth Army, nearly 300,000 men, inside Stalingrad. In his command post, General Friedrich Paulus studied the reports in silence. His supply lines were gone. There was no escape route. Outside, the temperature dropped below -20 degrees, and snow buried the wreckage of tanks and trucks. When Paulus finally radioed Berlin, his message was grim and simple. Stalingrad encircled. At that moment, every German officer knew what it meant. The battle wasn't a siege anymore. It was a prison, the High Command's denial. Back in Germany, Hitler refused to believe the reports. He promised that the Luftwaffe would resupply the Sixth Army by air, but it was impossible. Each day, the trapped soldiers needed 700 tons of food, fuel and ammunition. The planes could barely deliver a tenth of that. Inside the pocket, men froze in their trenches. They fought off starvation, disease and constant Soviet assaults. But the reality was clear. The Sixth Army had already been lost. The rest was just time. The turning point. As the weeks passed, the soldiers realized what the commanders already knew. The encirclement of Stalingrad wasn't just a military defeat, it was the breaking point of Germany's campaign in the East. After November 19, 1942, the myth of invincibility vanished. The Red Army had proven that it could plan, strike and win on a massive scale. The tide of the war had turned permanently. When the surviving German officers looked back years later, they all pointed to that day, November 19th, as the moment when they first felt the truth. Not in words, but in silence. The sound of Soviet artillery still echoing across the snow. Legacy. The Battle of Stalingrad would continue for months after that day. The city would finally fall in February 1943, with over 90,000 German troops surrendering. Only a few thousand would ever return home. But the true collapse began in November. That was the day the German High Command realized the war in the East could not be won. And so the story of Stalingrad isn't just about a battle. It's about that single shattering moment when confidence turned to fear and victory turned to survival. Because sometimes the most important battles aren't decided by one shot, but by one day when the truth can no longer be denied. This is a true World War II story, because sometimes the most important battles aren't decided by one shot, but by one day when the truth can no longer be denied. Do you agree? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more true World War II stories.